Pay attention, everyone. We have a new conspiracy theory, or at least an old conspiracy theory that's getting new attention.
With the attack on the USS Liberty that everyone's so afraid to talk about, clearly targeted on purpose by a country we're supporting, Israel, and it's somehow shameful to say that? Why? Why is it shameful to say that? Who knows why it's shameful to say that, but it shouldn't be.
Hey everyone, Rich Lowry of National Review here, and that was Tucker Carlson, of course, talking about the attack on the USS Liberty. The idea is that during the 6 Days War, Israel went out of its way, unprovoked, deliberately to attack a U.S. naval vessel, killing dozens of U.S. sailors on board because Israel is such a treacherous, alleged friend and partner of the United States. This has long been a chestnut of anti-Semitic theorizing. With the rise of the woke right, this theory has gotten more currency. We heard it talked about at the recent TPUSA conference. Here's Jack Posobiec.
As Navy veterans, as anyone who serves in the Navy, you learn about, you study, and you realize that we live in a serious world, and it's something that a lot of people in the Navy feel that we never really got full accountability for. Still have a lot of questions about the Navy investigation that was done and the official statements that came out. A lot of people said, just doesn't feel like it's good enough when you have a ship with flying the U.S. flag that's being attacked by a country that you are nominally supposed to believe is an ally.
Now, the conspiracy theory here is demented. However, the event actually happened, obviously. 34 U.S. sailors killed, 171 wounded. Just awful. Just an awful scene on the USS Liberty, which is a spy ship. Now, this is during the 6 Days War between Israel, of course, and an Arab coalition, including Egypt and Jordan. Very sensitive. The Sixth Fleet is monitoring the situation. This is during the Cold War, 1967. You don't want a flashpoint with the Soviet Union. During the Cold War, the Sixth Fleet is keeping its distance from the action, but the Liberty, a spy ship, gets quite close to it. At one point, just 13 nautical miles from the Sinai coast, where it can see the actual damage from the fight here between Israel and Egypt. At one point, it requests a destroyer escort, a U.S. destroyer escort, but it is denied from higher ups. At another point, it gets an order to remove itself by as far as 100 miles from the combat zone, but the communication system in the U.S. Navy at that time is so complicated, it doesn't get the message until after this terrible event has happened. So what sets this event in train? Well, there are a lot of elements. I'm going to simplify a little bit here, but there's an explosion in an ammunition dump on the Sinai coast. The Israelis assume Egyptian ships have shelled this location. So they go looking for Egyptian ships, and they see what is the Liberty. They don't know that. They see the Liberty heading towards Egypt, and they think, aha, that must be an Egyptian ship that is fleeing after carrying out this attack. They do recon. They don't see identifying markers. So the assumption that this is an Egyptian vessel holds. As Posobiec noted, there was a flag on this U.S. vessel, but an later inquiry from the U.S. speculated that there wasn't a lot of wind that day, so the flag might not have been visible from the air. So the assumption is, again, Egyptian ship just shelled the coast of Sinai. Israeli jets strafe the Liberty, and then more Israeli jets come who had been engaged with Egyptian infantry on the ground and are armed with napalm, and they napalm the U.S. Liberty. This is no doubt, it's just a horrible event, a savage attack. But as they're carrying out this attack, they're made uneasy by the fact there's no return fire. What's going on? Could this possibly be an Israeli ship? A friendly fire incident involving an Israeli ship? So they stop the attack and check, and there are no Israeli ships in the vicinity that report that they are taking fire. So it must not be an Israeli ship. So the attack continues. Still, there's this uneasiness. They look for markings again. They still don't see a flag, but someone notices that the letters on the side of the ship on the hull are Latin. They're not Arabic, as you would expect with an Egyptian ship. Now, it's possible an Egyptian ship would put Latin letters on the hull as a deceptive action, but that's unlikely. So that creates real doubt on the part of the Israelis. But then there's another series of terrible events. A squadron of Israeli Torpedo boats show up. They look at the Liberty, compare it to what they have on file, and they say, wait a minute, this is the silhouette of an Egyptian freighter. This is indeed a hostile vessel. Meanwhile, on the Liberty, the captain is giving the order, do not fire on these torpedo boats. But one gunner doesn't get the order in time and does fire on the Israeli torpedo boats briefly. Then the ammunition is cooking off. So it seems as though there's more firing at the torpedo boats. And the torpedo boats are, wait a minute, here's an Egyptian ship firing at us. They request permission to engage. They reluctantly get it. They fire 5 torpedoes, and one tragically hits the Liberty, blows a huge hole in the ship, instantly killing more than 24 sailors. Now, finally, a raft from the U.S. Liberty floats out, and an Israeli torpedo boat picks it up and sees there are U.S. naval markings on this raft. And they finally realize this is a U.S. ship. Instantly, they inform and apologize to the U.S. naval attaché. They put him on an Israeli helicopter, try to get him out to the Liberty. He can't land on the ship because of darkness. The torpedo boats offer assistance to the Liberty. The Liberty rejects them. It's a spy ship. It's on a sensitive mission, and all sorts of apologies from Israeli officials instantly to their counterparts in the United States, and offers to pay restitution and compensation. They realize this is a grievous mistake. So is Israel perhaps faking all this regret and deliberately carried out this attack for some reason? This doesn't make any sense on any level. On any level. First of all, Israel is desperate for U.S. support and was fearful of the Soviet Union. There's no way it was going to go out of its way to commit an act of war against its superpower partner. And by the way, the fog of war was working both ways here. The Liberty didn't realize until the end that it was being attacked by Israeli forces. Now, what are the theories for why Israel would supposedly take this enormous risk of attacking a U.S. vessel deliberately? Well, some people say it was trying to hide its gains it had made in the Sinai during the war, but it wasn't trying to hide those gains, or it was trying to keep from the United States that it was going to attack Syria. It wasn't trying to hide that from the United States either, or it had supposedly carried out a slaughter of Egyptian POWs and wanted to hide the truth there, so undertook this murderous cover-up against the USS Liberty. None of this adds up. None of this makes sense. But the fact is that for Israel and for the Jews, when it comes to the environment now that's been created by some right-wing influencers, the truth is not good enough, and the truth is not a defense. I'm Rich Lowry, over and out.